All right, I think 2 of them passed it. So.
Hey, Joe?
Yeah, Joe, I took both, and I found that between what you had told us and the practicing the exams that are on that website that you pointed out, that several questions I was able to answer from having done the questions on the website a couple times.
All right, good.
And other ones, it seems like they've tried to put a lot of information in kind of a confusion. If you really sit down and read what they're saying, I was able to pick out the answer based on what they had told me.
And how did you do on the exams?
Very well. Passed both.
Congratulations! That's right. You wrote to me, didn't you, Bill?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Bill. It's been one of those weeks, you know. So.
No, I understand, Joe. I've had those myself.
That's great. That's great. That's great.
Yep,
so
it certainly is.
now,
They also offered the extra exam, and I toyed with the idea of taking it. But
the extras, the extras a little bit different. So the extras a little bit different because there's a lot of math in there.
Right.
Yeah, and it's they do a lot of rectangular to polar coordinates, and then we consider the discharge rate of capacitors and stuff like that. You know, it's all mathematical, so you have to compute that. So that takes
with my calculator, because I had one that will do the logs and the inverses. It's not the same as you had, and not all the functions are really intuitive, so I probably would have really struggled with that section.
Yeah. So that's the reason I selected that calculator, because we can use it all the way through extra, and a lot of the functionality is pretty simple there. And just as a heads up, before we go into the extra class, I spend 2 nights just going over some basic math stuff. So some trigonometry and some very simple calculus, because you need that to get through the extras. So that's a little bit different. That's a little bit different exam.
Yep,
So congratulations. So tell me all about it. Was this study sheet helpful? Did this cover a lot of it?
It was very much so. A lot of the questions that were on there were directly on the study sheet. And I found, in the general exam, found some of them that were very straightforward. The first 10 or so, I wondered when the questions were going to start to get harder. But then they did, and there were a couple I had to guess at them because I hadn't seen them. But other ones, as I say, from having done the...
Somebody's got their mic, needs to mute their mic. Thank you.
Okay. But some of the other ones, as I say, by the one, for example, about asking for the resistance of a resistor, told me what the resistance in series, they were equal resistors, 3 in series, they gave me the resistance, 3 in parallel, same resistor, 3 in parallel, they gave me that resistor, and I wanted to know what the value of the resistor was.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Recognizing each one was 3 in series, it just divided by 3 and had the answer.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I was going to mention. The wording that they use on the general exam can be tricky. So you have to. Somebody else asked me about that this week too. You have to be careful and read the questions very carefully. But that's great. So you're all set then. You're done here. You're ready to go. Okay.
Yep.
All
right. I just got to figure out how to finish programming the Beofung, and I'll be all set.
Well, we're going to go through this pretty quickly, and if we have time on Thursday, I will bring up. As a matter of fact, I'll make it a point to go over that on Thursday. So
okay.
I'll have Chirp installed, and Chirp is a freeware program, and I'll hook up my Baofeng, and we'll do it together. So.
Okay. Yeah, the problem I'm having right at the minute is it downloads okay, but after I change things, it won't upload. So maybe we can go over that.
Sure. Just make the easy answer to that is make sure that you're in frequency mode, not channel mode, when you start the procedure. Loading is not a problem, so you have to hit that VFO button. Make sure that you're in frequency mode. Otherwise, you run into that problem.
When you upload, do you have to highlight the lines that you changed?
No. Nope.
Okay. And something else is going on. I'm not sure what.
So, are you using the program that came with your Baofeng, or are you using Chirp?
I'm using Chirp on a Mac. So I've got the latest.
That's above my pay grade.
So I did just download the latest version of Chirp, but I haven't had a chance to try that. That may have resolved the problem. I'm running Apple's latest software, Yosemite, and I have a feeling that may be at the root of the problem.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big Mac fan, by the way, so I have Macs in every room of the house practically,
yep,
and not the same company.
That's right. Yep.
And it's not the same company. And I'm a little disappointed, a little brokenhearted, to be honest with you.
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
Frank here. Before we start, could you review the use of the calculator in the decibel calculation? I didn't make.
Sure. Sure. No problem. No problem. So we're going to start anyway. So I'm glad you have that question, and I am going to try to answer that for you right now. And let's go back up to our DB question here. And so I'm going to try to make this a little bigger. Everybody can see it clearly. All right. So it's actually very simple. Okay. So so we want to look at this one here. So this, right? And this is what we're going to look at. So what we do is the stuff in this parentheses is what we want to handle first. So power reference, okay, and powered measure. So the reference power is a value that we're given from some documentation, such as our owner's manual, okay, for example. So if we go to my ICOM 7000 and we read that it's capable of 100 watts, okay, we would put in 100 underneath here, okay. Let me make this a little smaller so I can write on here. All right. All right. So, hold on. I gotta do this whole over to another screen and change this to a pen. Okay, pen. All right. Cool. So now, so for example, let's say that they told us that the reference power here was 100 watts, right? Because that's what my machine is rated for. I got this value from the owner's manual, all right? And then I go out to my antenna and I measure the power that's coming out of my antenna with a watt meter, okay? And it says, okay, it's got how many, Frank? How many watts do you think it's putting out?
Give it 80.
80. Okay, cool. 80. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out my calculator, right? I'm going to hit the button in the clear a couple of times. And I am going to take 80, right? And then if you want to do it with me, it'll work great. 80, and then I hit the divide button. And I divide that by 100, right? And I hit the equal sign. And I get 0.8. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the log button. Okay? So it's the button in the top row, third one from the left. I'm going to hit the log button. Okay? And then I get minus 0.096. And then to get the final answer, so I multiply that times 10. So I hit the times button, which is underneath the divide, hit 10, and hit the equal sign. So my dB, because it was 10 times the log 10 of this expression, right? So it's 10 times the log 10 of 0.8. This is what we got, okay? And then once I did this, I just took the log 10. The log 10 ended up to be 0.0969, et cetera, and then it's 10 times this, right? 10 times this, 0.0969, gave me 0.9 dB. Did you get the same answer, Frank?
I got a -9. I guess I hit it twice.
Yeah, it's minus dB, so it's 0.9 dB. Yeah. I'm sorry, I meant to say 0.9. Yeah.
Hey Joe, sorry.
Yes.
Can you share your screen? I couldn't see anything.
I did share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
I can.
Yeah. My screen is shared.
Yeah.
Yep, it's okay.
David can.
Okay. So my screen is being shared, sir.
Oh, it's saying that waiting to Joe's comments.
You might have to drag it left because you're writing on the right side.
No.
Yeah.
No, probably maybe it's a security. You need to click. You're only sharing to the few individuals.
No, I have 100. I have 100. I'm going to stop sharing it and share it again. Okay, hold on. So let me. Now everybody should be off, and we're going to turn it back on again. And,
Oh yeah, now it works. Thanks.
okay. I'm so sorry. This software is just awful.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. If you guys sign up for the extra class, we will not be using GoToMeeting, okay? Just so you know in the future. This is... All right, somebody is giving me a little feedback there. Okay, is there any other questions on this calculation? Are we okay on the calculations?
Yeah, I am. Yes, thanks, Joe.
All right. Okay, no problem.
Hey Joe,
If you
quick question.
do, yes, sir.
Since you brought it up, even though we shouldn't put the cart in front of the horse, but when do you intend to start the extra class?
My wife is making me take a month off because she says I've been working too hard. So I will not be doing it in April, but I'll include you. You're on my mailing list, so probably in May, and I will send you information on that.
Sounds
Okay?
good, thank you.
Okay. Now the extra class, you have to relax, and I do tape them. The extra class I take a little bit differently, so there's no real time limit on it, so you really understand the subject material. And as long as we're on the subject of the extra, here's my philosophy on the extra, folks. Extra, that's what I am, right? So what I expect from you is to pass the information down. And so the extra class, we go over everything in fine detail, why these formulas are the way they are, and why things work, so that when you get a brand new ham who doesn't know anything about anything, you can explain it to them in detail. So the extra class takes about 12 sessions, 12 to 16 sessions, depending on how stuck you get, okay? Because I really want you to know it. I don't want you to just pass the test. Here, I want to get you on the air. I want you to be careful, but I want to get you on the air as quickly as I can. The extra, you're already on the air. The privileges you have as extra, frequency-wise, are not that much different than general, okay? What's more important is that you really, really understand this stuff, okay? So when it's your turn to teach, you'll do it the right way. I'm getting...
When does the question pool, Joe, I'm sorry, when does the question pool for the extra expire?
I think that it doesn't expire for another year.
Okay.
The general expires on June 15th, so I want you to take your generals way before that, but the extra one doesn't expire. It just changed last year, or the year before. Yeah, last year. It just changed. So you've got at least a year, probably 18 months to get that done. Okay? All right. The other thing is, I think somebody emailed me. If you live on Long Island, there's a VE session at Great South Bay this Saturday. So if you're interested in that, let me know. And if you guys get your pass your exams on general, there's a really cool thing happening, and that's the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Lusitania, which sank on May 7th, 1915. And if you guys have your HF rigs ready to go, or even if you don't, find your nearest club and they'll lend you one. You can work with the rig there. You can, so there's a commemorative thing between the United States and Ireland and England. So it'll be a good opportunity for you to get your feet wet with HF. And if you want information on that, I'm going to take you to a website here. Hold on, as soon as my mouse starts working again. It's a lot of fun. It happens rarely that we have this opportunity. So this is another club here on Long Island, and they are just fantastic. And right here, you can sign up, okay? And with your general privileges, you can operate any of these bands, okay? And you fill out when you want to do this. This happens to be my wife. She's taken this slot here. And if you look on the 2nd of May, that's me. So that's where I'm going to be. And this is really well done. You get to talk whatever time you want. This is UTC time. So for here in New York, you have to add 4 hours depending on where you live. But it's a lot. We get dedicated stations in Europe that are going to be involved with this. Anyway, I thought you might want to see it. It's a lot of fun. All right, cool. Let's. Any other questions before we go to work here? All right.
Joe, I'm getting a lot of feedback from somebody who's on the phone.
Yeah. Can everybody just try to mute their phones, please, for me? I'm getting that too, a rustling noise.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. Coming from Robert. That's what I'm seeing. All right, Robert, thank you. That's better. Is that better? All right, that's better, I think. Okay, thank you, Robert. Okay, so I just want to go through this. I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. I want to get as much done as we can. On Thursday, I'm going to start off the class with the Baofeng programming, and then we'll just finish up. Because Chapter 8, you already know Chapter 8 from taking the technical stuff. The rules for safety are exactly the same. There's only one question on the general exam that's not on the technical exam, and I'll go over that with you. And Chapter 8 on safety, that question is when you use the clips to hook up to a pole, when you're climbing a pole, make sure that the part that you clip on faces inside. I'll go over that question with you, okay? That's the only question that's different. Everything else is the same. Always wear safety goggles, blah, 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 blah. Okay. All right, so I think we left off here. We had done the tubes, and we talked about analog and integrated circuits here, okay? And the big thing that you need to know, one of the questions they may ask you here is CMOS. CMOS is most commonly associated with computers. I know we have some computer gurus here. And I am not going to state this correctly, so I'll ask my computer experts to correct me. When you start up your computer, it maintains settings, okay? And that's done in CMOS, all right? And CMOS stands for complementary metal oxide semiconductor, okay? It is powered by a little tiny watch battery inside your computer that you only have to change once every 5 years, I guess, or something like that. And it has basic information about your computer, whether you want the sound card to be activated, what kind of hard drive the computer has. Same thing in ham radio. Most radios have this CMOS. It keeps your settings, okay? We use CMOS because it's very, very fast and it consumes very small power. And as long as that watch battery is going, you're good to go, okay? All right, cool. And they specify it here. It says CMOS devices are used in personal computers, and they're also used in amateur transceivers. Remember, we're talking about equipment that you're going to be buying to use your general privileges, so HF rigs, okay? And the reason they want you to know that, because yes, inside of that new radio that you will buy someday, there is a CMOS battery. Okay? So that's why they want you to know that. We talked about these logic circuits, right? And I'll refer you to the study sheet on those. And integrated circuits, okay? They ask this question, MMIC. Don't get rattled about this question. I think all 5 exams have this. Bill, did you have this MMIC question on your exam?
Yes, I did, Joe.
Yeah. Okay. So most people, thank you, Bill. So most people get rattled when they see this big, long term. Okay. Don't worry about it. Okay. Just know that MMIC stands for monolithic microwave integrated circuits. Okay. That's really all you need to know. And the question number, if you want to look it up in the back of the book, this is the question number that refers to that. Okay. All right, so don't let that rattle your cage. They love to rattle your cage as generals. Don't let them do that to you, okay? All right, cool. Then we talked about memory. I think we discussed this already. RAM, random access memory, versus a ROM memory. And the difference is its volatility. When you take out the power, what happens? So you should know this, okay? And then we talked about the different interfaces. Everybody's pretty familiar with them, and there's pictures of them in the book. I know I promised you I was going to have some interfaces for you. I just came in from work 2 minutes ago, so I didn't have a chance to get them together. I will try to have them for you at next class, okay? Then the question that they love to ask you is about LCDs. So if you look at the calculator that you have in front of you, okay, for this class, that's a perfect example of LCD. If you turn off the lights, you can't see it, okay? So the question's going to be, what's the drawback of LCDs? And you need a separate lighting source, okay? Otherwise, you can't see them. LCDs are very, very power efficient, okay? So that's the beauty of them. The bad thing is you can't see them without a separate light of some kind, either a backlight or whatever, okay? They'd love to ask this question. I don't know why, but they do. All right. All right. Then, and if I go too fast and you need more explanation, please interrupt me, okay? So we talk about rectifiers and power supplies. So everything requires power. Everything electrical requires power. And how do we get power? Through some kind of power source. And they're known as rectifier circuits, okay? There's basically 2 types of power sources, the half-wave and full-wave rectifier circuits, okay? And what all of this boils down to is the half-wave rectifier circuit works part-time and the full-wave rectifier works full-time. So if you look at the wave, okay, this is a full-wave rectifier as opposed to, do they have it here? Yeah. Okay. So in a full-wave rectifier, it's working all the time. In a half-wave rectifier, it's only converting the power half of the time. It sends out these pulses of power, okay? So one of them sends it about twice as efficiently or twice as often as the half-wave rectifier, okay? So that's really all you need to know. You don't need to go into this whole formula thing. Don't worry about this stuff. All you have to know is this line here, this bottom line here, okay, is the advantage of the full wave rectifier is that output is producing during the entire 360-degree cycle of the AC cycle. So when the wave is occurring, the full wave rectifier works all the time. Otherwise, it works like this. It only works half the time. Okay? And why isn't everything full wave rectifier? For a variety of reasons. It works twice as hard. It generates more heat. Normally, you have to have a cooling, some kind of cooling mechanism or instrumentality to make that work. It's more expensive. Full wave rectifier is a little bit more expensive. there's a variety of reasons. Just know that there's two different types. Okay? No big deal. Okay? And then they go into this big long explanation that nobody really cares about. Okay? But in essence, this is the one that you need to worry about. The peak inverse voltage applied to the diode in a half-wave rectifier is twice the supply's peak output voltage. What does this mean? This means that what is being sent out of the rectifier, what causes the power supply to be the power supply, goes through a diode. That makes sense. Diode, Roach Motel, electrons only go one way, right? So in a half-wave rectifier, it's done twice. Okay? So don't worry about it too much. I don't want you to get too crazy about this, but this is probably the question that you will be seeing. Okay? All right. Again, please don't worry about it too much. All right? I'll try to get you through other stuff that's a little bit more interesting. Okay? So filter circuits. A rectifier's output pulses of DC currents are unsuitable for direct use by electronic circuits. The pulses must be smoothed out so that the voltage is steady. Remember that the rectifier sends out little pulses of power. Pulse, 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 pulse. Okay? And you need to smooth that out. And one of the mechanisms, the most popular way of doing that is with capacitors. Since capacitors store energy, it takes those little pulses, right, and starts, and I'll give you a graphic, one of my great graphics here. I know you guys are going to ask for autographed copies of my graphics. Obviously, I didn't do well in art in school, so think of it this way. So the rectifier is sending out little pulses of power, right, and they hit a capacitor, which is like a glass or a cup or a jar, and they start to fill this up. And it's like a drop of water, you know, it starts to fill up. And then the capacitor, since it can discharge at a higher rate, it serves to smooth out the power. So instead of getting these little pulses, you get a stream of electrons going out. Okay? Inductors work in a similar manner as well. Okay? So it takes these little pulses, okay, and because of a capacitor, does what a capacitor do, it smooths out the power. That's all this means. And we call that a filter circuit. Okay?
So does that, the rectifier output, is that referring to a half wave or a full wave? Or doesn't matter?
Either way. Either way. So if this is a half wave, this will be a full wave. It'll be twice as many for the same given period of time. So if this is 4, that should be 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Missed one. 8. So half-wave rectifier will send out 4 pulses. A full-wave rectifier will send out 8. It's sending the information a little bit more consistently. Okay? The problem with a full-wave rectifier, it tends to generate more heat, and you have to deal with that heat somehow. So either a heat sink or a fan or some other mechanism. Half-wave rectifiers, not so much. In your Baofangs, your power supplies are half-wave rectifiers. Okay? Just for an example. Why? Because they're inexpensive and they can't deal with cooling too much. Even though they're half-wave rectifiers, I told you, if you hold down the transmit button for any extended period of time on your Baofeng, the LCD disappears because of the heat it's generated for that. Okay? So anyway, filtered circuits, just a way to smooth out the power. That's all it is, just making the power a little bit steadier, okay? And we call that power regulation, okay? And they go into this whole big song and dance about it. You can read about it, not to worry too much about this, okay? That's all you need to know about filter circuits. Power safety. Okay, so big question here, all right? And I'm going to pick on Joyce, because Joyce is being very quiet. Joyce, you open up your power supply. What's the first thing you never touch? She's typing to me, I think. Or maybe she's not there. All right, maybe she's not there. How about you, Judy? What's the thing you don't touch in your power supply? Oh, Joyce.
The capacitor.
Yeah. Be careful with that, guys, okay? So a lot of times you'll need to use these special type of resistors called bleeders, okay? And you can read about that in the manual, and there's also a YouTube video I can send you on that, okay? So capacitors, as we were told here in our class by one of our high-energy super-duper guys, the guy that had the 1.21 gigawatt radio station, the capacitors can store energy for an extended period of time. So even if your power supply has been off for a couple of days, do not trust capacitors, okay?
You wanted that capacitor story I mentioned?
Yes, please.
Back in high school when I was taking a physics class and we were wiring up circuit boards as part of that, somebody used to get a kick out of taking a charged capacitor and throwing it into the parts drawer of capacitors. And what happens over time is the charge in the capacitor bleeds off and charges, at least partially, the other capacitors in the drawer. So when you open the drawer and reach for a capacitor, in that drawer, you're in for a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have to experience that firsthand. Hopefully it will be a small capacitor, and then you'll remember this chapter, I promise. Be careful with that, okay? So they have switch mode or switching supplies, okay? And those have a bunch of transistors and are now they're integrated circuits. A lot of times, like computers, and I'm hoping that our computer gurus will correct me if I'm wrong. The power supply for a computer, for example, has to send out multiple power. So it sends out 12 volts, it sends out 5 volts, sends out 3 volts, all sorts of different voltage. So the same thing here in HF radios, okay? And it changes its power, and it changes how much power it's putting out depending on where you are, okay, and what power you need. So you can dial the power on all HF radios. You can go down to 1 watt, or you can go up to 1,500 watts, and the thing that handles that is the switching power supply, okay? All right, cool. They go into other things here about being careful. You get this thing called parasitic inductance. When you get up to high power and you use amplifiers, you'll see that happen. And I don't own any amplifiers, so I haven't seen it firsthand. But just kind of get a general feel for what these are. Okay, and this is the block diagram of how it works. And you have these transistors, which are now integrated circuits, and they change as needed. So they can start off as half-wave rectifiers. They'll change. They'll do all sorts of cool stuff. Okay. All right, cool. Batteries and chargers. I'm going to just go right by this. Everybody knows what batteries look like, right? And what they do and what they don't do. Remember, you cannot charge these guys, alkaline batteries. The Energizer Bunny, it's a one-shot deal, right? Nickel, cadmium, lithium, all of these you can, but the word alkaline, stay away from. And then one question they love to ask, which is not in the manual and not in my study sheet either, is you got to be careful when you charge any automotive battery, any lead-acid battery, okay? This is the question that they'll ask you about, okay? Because even if they're sealed, okay, so the new batteries don't have the little caps like the old battery did, and you had to fill them up with distilled water or acid, even though they're completely sealed now, when you charge them, they emit hydrogen gas, okay? And if you're not careful or decide to have a cigarette, you could blow yourself up. So they do ask this question. I think it's on 3 out of the 5 exams. Okay, so be careful. Lead acid, hydrogen, bad, bad, bad. Okay. Okay, cool. Then they talk about alternative power. They talk about solar, photoelectric conversion. We discussed this a little bit, all right? And make note of this one. So if you highlight this area here, okay, that in solar cells, you get about 0.5 volts. Okay? All right, cool. And that's about all we need to know there. Okay? All right, cool. Connectors, this is straight from your technical, so the connectors have not changed, all right? And they'll ask you about this. I think the only question they'll ask you about is coming up here. Hold on. And I think this one is one of the questions they may ask you. Bill, if you have anything to chime in since you just took the general exam. One of the ladies just took the general exam also, I believe. I don't know if it was Joyce or Judy. Forgive me. It's been one of those weeks. Somebody just took the general exam. Just passed her technician exam. Let's see if anybody writes to me, tells me who did it. I'm just trying to confirm that these questions are and aren't on the exam. Okay. RF connector. Yeah.
The one of the ones that was on mine was the about the output of a solar cell.
Okay.
That was one of the 7 I missed.
All right. Okay. It's 0.5. Okay. Good. Joyce. Joyce, but didn't you pass the technician? But didn't you take the general also? I'm waiting for an answer from Joyce. No, you didn't. Okay.
I asked for it. Just before I asked for it, they said, I'm fully prepared for it. I said, okay, I'm ready to take, but don't take if you're not fully prepared.
Yeah, you should have taken it anyway.
Yeah, and also they said they're up against a meeting. So I don't want to bother them. I said, okay.
Take it anyway. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, anyway, so they talk about the connectors, and they talk about BNC connectors. They talk about, you can see what these look like. Nothing too earth-shattering here, okay? They may ask you this one. It's on one of the exams. Handheld transceivers use SMA connectors. That's this little guy here, okay? And that's the only thing they're going to ask you, okay?
I might ask about the N waterproof connector.
Oh, that's right, Bill. Thank you so much. Yeah. So one of the questions they will ask you is about a waterproof connector, okay? And it's the N-type connector, and it's this guy here, okay? And its advantage is, why would you use an N-type connector? It's waterproof, okay? That's the reason for it. Okay. I sent you guys late, and I apologize. My brain cells have totally died here. I promised I was going to send you something on the multimeters, and I forgot, and somebody reminded me this afternoon. So I sent you some YouTube videos on basic multimeter, okay? So multimeters, you can measure voltage and amperage and resistance and all sorts of stuff, okay? And just watch the videos, and that'll get you through the exams that the exam questions you need to know, okay? All right, cool. Oscilloscope, I didn't have a chance to get my oscilloscope up and running. Is why do you need an oscilloscope? And the answer is that you want to take very precise measurements. Okay, so oscilloscope, very precise measurements. That's really all you need to know for the oscilloscopes. And I'll try to have one for you so we can play with it and that kind of stuff. Okay. All right, cool. Signal generators, I'll try to have one for you as well. Mine doesn't look anything like this. Mine's very, very simple. And what they do is they generate a signal at a specific frequency, okay? So you can see what that wave looks like when you hook it up to your oscilloscope. And you can pass that through the circuits of the radio, and you can see if you're getting exactly that signal out. So it generates a wave of a specific type, and then you can measure, once you know what that signal is, you hook up the oscilloscope to the other end of the circuit, and if the signals matches, that component is good. So that's the reason you would use signal generators. Okay. And then the coolest thing, I think I showed this to you in the technical class, is my antenna analyzer. It's pretty cool. It measures impedance. It tells you when the antenna is resonant to a specific frequency. So remember that an antenna is only resonant on a specific frequency. To change that, you need an antenna tuner. Okay? So it's a very, very simple device. And I promise I will have that hooked up for you next class. But does everybody remember my antenna analyzer?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, okay. So it's very, very simple. It's a little graph. It tells you where it is, and there you go. Okay? So it's pretty cool. And field strength and RF power meters. This is one. This is an older type. You measure this at a distance from your antenna, depending on the type of antenna that you have. Normally it's about 24 inches. Actually, there's a formula for that, and it tells you what the radio is putting out, or what the antenna is putting out more accurately. And then they give you this formula here, blah, 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 blah. This is what you really want to use. This is called a bird watt meter. These things are treasured by serious ham radio people, and you've got to put in these little cartridges in here for wattage, and they have all different watts, 5 watts, 50 watts, 250 watts. And it's a very expensive machine, but this is the most accurate way of determining what you're putting out at a specific power level and at a specific frequency range. Incredible device, really amazing. You hook up the radio on one side here, and you hook up the antenna on the other, and this machine will tell you exactly what you're putting out. Okay? All right. That's it for Chapter 4. We got past it. Yay! Okay, cool. Signal review. This is very, very simple. It's exactly the same as the technician stuff. We all know that CW stands for continuous wave. Nothing new here. We know what modulation is, right? So Andy Eubanks, define modulation for me. Andy knows. He's just playing hard to get. Andy's not answering me. How about you, Frank? You volunteer?
Sure, it's adding information to the signal.
Yeah, that's all it is. So remember when we took our technician stuff, I pressed a button to talk to my buddy Mark, and he didn't answer because I didn't say anything. So what I added to it, which was my voice, that would be modulation, right? Okay. All right, cool. And they talk about the different forms here. Don't worry about this too much. And they talk about the bandwidth of each signal. Okay. The big thing is, remember the study sheet. Know this one. I want you to know these two guys here. Okay. Those are the most commonly asked questions. Bill, did they ask you this question on the general? These two guys?
Yes, twice in 2 different forms.
Yeah, they want you to understand. Thank you, Bill. They want you to understand the difference between talking and digital modes. Actually, it should be these three. I'm sorry. And CW. CW is the smallest amount of bandwidth. Okay.
Both my questions were related to working against the end of the band.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Maximum usual. Yeah. That kind of stuff. Yeah. All right. So digital modes. We just went over this in the technical. It's called FSK modes, frequency shifted keying. There's a whole bunch of them. The digital mode sends zeros and ones, that kind of stuff. RTTY, and we all know how RTTY works, right? RTTY. Tell me about RTTY. Let's see, who am I going to pick on? Everybody turns off their mic so they don't think I'm here. Judy Cox, how are you, Judy?
I'm good.
So tell me about RTTY. What do you know about RTTY?
Well, it's not. It's old and it's not very fast. Not very.
Right.
And
what kind of code does it use? What kind of code does it use?
It uses 5-bit Bordeaux.
That's it. You got it. Like the wine, right? So Bordeaux. I love the accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it uses like the wine. It uses Bordeaux, which is great. And it's 5-bit. All right? They love to ask that question. Okay? All right, cool. And it doesn't have any error correction. And that's why we come up with the term RTTY is another word for crappy, okay? All right, cool. So remember that one, and you know that it has no error correction, all right? All right, cool. And then they talked about this stuff, the symbol rate or the baud rate, okay? How fast it transmits those zeros and ones, okay? And CW is a digital mode, okay? And they go into this whole big explanation. Not necessary. The one all you need to know is it's 5-bit Bordeaux code. All right, and then they talk about multiple protocols here. You know, PSK31, MSK16, MT63. I told you there's a million of them. Okay, don't worry about them at all. Okay, just the ones on your study sheet. Okay. PSK31 we talked about. It's the most popular. Packet modes, we talk about that. It has 3 components, the header, the data, and the trailer. Don't really need to know it so much. Don't worry about that stuff. Bill, you correct me if I'm wrong. You just hop right in there and tell me if I'm forgetting something, okay? They may ask you this question, okay? ARQ, what does that mean? I know it's on one of the exams. And ARQ stands for Automatic Repeat Request. So if you're sending in PSK31 and it thinks that the message didn't go through, it'll auto-correct. Okay, it'll ask for a correction. Okay. Packet and Winmore, you can read about that. Not so important, so don't worry. Okay. We're going to talk about the building blocks of the radio. The first thing is the oscillator, okay? And any oscillator, all it does is it produces a sine wave. That's all it does, okay? In the early days of ham radio, you used to have to buy crystals for each specific frequency. And I think David will bear me out on this. David, do you remember going to Heathkit or a Radio Shack and ordering crystals for a specific frequency?
Yes, I do, and I still have one of those radios.
Do you? Okay.
I only have one crystal for it, but I still have the radio.
That's great. So in the old days, if you wanted to transmit on 146.850, you had to go to one of the electronic stores. You had to order it. You waited about 2 weeks, okay, and they would send you this little crystal, and you plug it into your radio. And if you were really sophisticated, you had a choice of about 6 different crystals you could put in, or 12 crystals. Well, that got old real quick, so they invented the oscillator. And the oscillator lets you dial the variable frequency oscillator, which is the tuning knob, right? Allows us to go through a huge variety of different frequencies. Okay, so that's.
I had a Raytheon CB handheld that had slots for 3 crystals. And
that was heavy duty, boy. That was.
Yeah, you could put in crystal A, B, and C and tune to 3 different frequencies.
Wow, that was amazing. In those days, and the crystals were expensive, so by the time you finished, you had some serious bucks involved in there,
Yep.
you know? Yeah. Anyway, and you had to wait 2 weeks, right, or a week, or 10 days or something for the crystal to show up. There was special order.
Yep.
It was amazing. Anyway, yeah, so this is a very, very simple diagram, okay, of how it works, okay, and amazing device, and just improved all radio and TV communication exponentially, okay. So it consists of how does an oscillator work. It consists of an inductor and a capacitor, okay. and that's known as an LC circuit, okay, because it feeds back on itself, so it corrects itself. So as a signal goes through the system like this, it automatically corrects for itself. It's also known as a tank circuit, so if you see that expression, don't be afraid of it. It's also known as an LC circuit. So it's a self-correcting circuit to make sure that the frequency of the oscillation is correct, that you're on the right frequency. Okay? That's all it means. Okay? Sometimes they use crystal, quartz crystal. Okay? And that's what is used in our Baofungs, by the way, and that's known as a crystal oscillator. Okay? They're very, very, very accurate, and they're pretty good. Then they talk about the VFO, okay, and the fact that it's variable. Okay. All right. The next thing we talk about is mixers. Okay. And what a mixer does is it takes a signal, two signals, and creates a third signal for that. Okay. So a mixer circuit combines two input frequencies and produces the sum and difference of its output at its output. This is known as heterodyning. Okay? So they're not going to ask you for the math or any of this stuff. They want you to know what a mixer does, and this is what a mixer does. Okay? This is what a mixer does. All right? A multiplier is like a mixer. Okay? Very similar. Its difference is that a multiplier, instead of creating the sum of the differences of two frequencies, a multiplier creates a harmonic frequency, okay, a third frequency. All right? That's all you really need to know about that guy, okay? Modulators is what puts the mod in modulators. So if we add voice, for example, our modulator is what does that. Okay, and there's, of course, there's a demodulator on the other side to take the signal and bring it back to its original form. Okay, and it does that by putting the signal in a different form. It can be a phase variance, it could be frequency change, it can be an amplitude change. Okay, but they take the information, they attach it to the carrier, out it comes. Not exactly, but pretty close. Okay? All right, cool. And then they talk about these, how the modulators work, and blah, blah, blah. I don't need you to know that too much. Okay? So just know what what the difference is between them. Okay? Between a mixer. So what I'm interested in, you knowing, is what a mixer is. I want you to know what that is, so please review that. Okay, and if you review this between now and Thursday and still don't understand, certainly ask me, and I'll go into a little bit more detail for you, what a multiplier is and what a modulator is. Those are the three components I want you to know about. Okay? All right, cool. Don't worry about this stuff. All right. So let's talk about transmitters. Transmitters can be very simple or can be very complicated. The simplest type of transmitter is CW. If you have a battery of any kind of power source, an antenna, and two pieces of wire, you can create a CW transmitter. Okay? This is the simplest type of CW. So you have an antenna, you have some kind of amplification device, okay, and you have some kind of crystal control. That's for the CW to work on a specific device, on a specific frequency, I'm sorry. So the crystal or the oscillator decides on what frequency you're going to be on. The amplifier amplifies that signal, okay, and all you're doing is sending on-off pulses to the antenna. That's how this works, okay? Actually works the other way. So you pick the frequency, and this key decides that you're completing the circuit or not. It goes to the amplifier, to the antenna. There was a question?
Yeah, Joe, how's that that 40-meter kit from ARRL?
I don't know. I'm not. I really don't know. I haven't built it. I have no idea.
It's about
The
100
kit
bucks.
any kit that I've played with, and my wife's right behind me, and God bless her, she made the inductors, the Tony Parks kit. They work awesome.
Okay. Okay.
But they're SDR radios, software-defined radios. I don't have a lot of experience. But you know what? I will find out about it. There's a gentleman in my club who's just amazing with the kits. I will ask him. Celie, can you make a note to ask about the 40-meter ARRL?
Yeah, there's a 40-meter and a 20-meter kit.
Yeah. Yeah, remind me to send Neil an email on it. And what I'll do is when I get the email, his name is Neil. He's a super kit guy. He's the kit guru of the planet. As soon as I get that email, I'll send it to the entire group, and you can get his answer.
Awesome.
He's the guy you want to ask. I really don't know.
Okay.
Okay, cool. And then we're going to get, now we get a little bit more I don't like the manual. This should have been done the other way. So they should talk about these components after we talk about CW, because now you can see how the things work together, right? So we have a local oscillator here, okay? And then we have a VFO, variable frequency oscillator. It goes to the mixer, which we just talked about, okay? We then filter that, and we can filter that a bunch of different ways. And then it goes to our key or out to our antenna, okay? So for next class, I want you to tell me why this component is there. That's your homework for next class. Somebody's going to explain that to me. Okay? Somebody who doesn't already know the answer. I don't want the answer today. Okay?
Okay.
So
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
I got a quick question. What type of radios did, this is off the wall, but what type of radios did the spies use in World War II behind German lines and all that?
Yeah. They used foxhole radios that they later adapted to transmit as well. And they used all sorts of different things. Did you ever see the movie Wind Talkers?
Yes.
So they used so it was AM broadcasting. They had tubes, right? And the range was fairly limited, and they needed some kind of encoding signal. So for those of you who didn't see the movie, they needed a coding system, how to transmit voice information, phone information. So what they did was they recruited these native Indians to speak Cherokee or whatever, and there was one on one side of the battlefield and one on the other side of the battlefield, and since they spoke native languages such as Cherokee or whatever, that's what they used. But during World War II, I have to tell you, I'm a big student of history. It's amazing with the makeshift stuff that they came out with. They came out with all sorts of stuff. They would take cigarette lighters and make them into filters. They'd take the tips of pencils,
Wow.
and a razor blade and a safety pin, and make foxhole radios and foxhole transmitters that were actually pretty good. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, just amazing. So I can send you an article on that if you like. Really amazing stuff that they did, and they make it out of. Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
please
no problem.
do.
Yeah, it's very interesting. These guys were so ingenious. I mean, just about they'd make transmitters out of bobby pins and just amazing. I mean, there's no way I could do that. Anyway, all right, cool. And then they talk about AM phone transmitters, which are a little bit different. So next week, I want to know what role does this play? Why do I need this here? I don't want it from somebody who knows the answer today. So I'm going to look at people like Judy's going to explain that one to us because she volunteered. She raised her hand. Seal says she didn't see Judy's hand go up, but I saw it. It was quick, Seal. It was really quick. All right, and then so this is the AM version of that. Notice that there's multiple filters here, And we're going to ask Richard Lee to explain that to us. He's been way too quiet during this class. So Richard, your question for next week is, why do we need multiple filters for this? Why are there 2 filters there? Okay, cool. All right. Then they talk about FM transmitters and how they work. Blah, 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 blah. Notice that on FM, you only need 1 filter. I wonder why that is. Anyway, we'll find out next week. All right, cool. So overmodulation, everybody knows what that is, right? Nobody needs me to swallow the microphone again, right? So if I overmodulate the microphone, that's what that sounds like. Then they show you what it looks like here. Yeah, that. Okay, cool. The other thing that I want you to know is the use of ALC circuits. ALC circuits prevent overmodulation, and they're automatic level controls. All right, there is a question on that. Okay. The next thing I want you to know is, and they make a whole big deal about it, and when your microphone sounds like that, you probably have some kind of linearity problem, okay? It's this special 2-tone test, okay? And what you do is you emit 2 tones and that are not harmonically related, okay? So that's all you need to know to pass the test, okay? But for example, they give you an example here, use a 700 and a 1900 tone and see what comes out, all right? See if they're interfering with each other, all right? And the way you monitor it is through an oscilloscope, all right? So this is the most common test performed on amateur radio equipment. It's also performed on conventional commercial radio. It's also performed on television. It's also performed on almost every electronic device that outputs a signal, okay?
And that was on my exam, Joe.
Was it? Yeah, yeah. They love this question. All 5 exams, there's 5 different exams. All exams have this question, okay? So know that the 2-tone tests consist of 2 non-harmonically related. They are not related in any way. Non-harmonically related. That's the key phrase, okay? And normally you wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do this. I have a really good guy in our club who does this for me. And I just give him the radio, and he checks it out in 10 seconds. I'd probably be there for an hour. Okay. All right, cool. Speech processing, it uses compression so that the gain is consistent. The output is pretty consistent regardless of how your input is. So if you're yelling or if you're really soft, it comes out to be about the same. Okay? And what it does is it just levels things out on the gain, on your output, so you sound consistent. All right? All right, cool. You got to be careful with it. I'll try to have this for you so you can see it on my radio on the graphic interface. If you add too much compression or too much processing, it'll get distorted. This is important when you guys get your HF rig, and you've got to talk to that guy that's not in Tokyo, but is maybe in, next town over from Tokyo, and you're just trying to reach him to go that little bit further. You'll adjust the speech processing so he can hear you better, and you overdo it, and then nobody hears anything. Okay? All right. Overmodulation, this just reinstates the overmodulation, and here they talk about key clicks, okay? And key clicks are most commonly associated with CW, and you get these guys who actually do CW, and it's not computer generated, and these guys can CW at about 26 million words a second or something, and it's just going too fast. And the transmitter can't keep up with that, and you hear these clicks, and it totally messes up their signal. But there are guys that are really, we call them ringers, okay? So on field day, we have ringers we import, not my club certainly, because we would never cheat, but there are clubs on Long Island. Anyway, get these guys from like Massachusetts, and these guys are absolutely the best CW guys I've ever seen. I mean, I have no idea what they do. Actually, one guy that is very famous, he's blind, he can't see, and he just can do this the way you and I breathe air. I mean, it's just amazing. And if you do it too fast, you get these key clicks. That's what this means. Okay? That's all it means. All right, cool. Excuse me. They go into this digital mode concern. Certainly read about it, but there are no questions on the exam. Even though one's here, there are no questions in the exams. We come to my favorite topic, okay, something I know nothing about at all, and these are amplifiers, okay? And these are the class of amplifiers that you need to know, okay? And Class A is the one that is least efficient, all right? And it is just brute horsepower, okay? It has the greatest linearity, okay? But is the least efficient. Class B, it's pretty good. Again, this is not my area of expertise. I could be telling you something that's not correct. I've only used amplifiers twice in my life. I didn't like them, and I'm a QRP guy, obviously, so I have no need for them. All right, so you need to know Class A, B, AB, and then C. All you need to know about C, and that's the most commonly asked question, okay, on the Bill, did they ask any questions on amplifiers in your exam?
No, Joe, there wasn't, I don't believe. Not that I recall, anyway.
Okay, thank you. I think there is one exam that talks about the Class C amplifier, and the Class C, we can remember it because it only works with CW, okay? So if you decide to get into amplifiers, you can go into them. Please note that there are these different types of amplifiers, these 4 types of amplifiers, and they're available on eBay from any amateur radio store, and blah, 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 blah. Okay?
Hey, Joe?
Yes.
Quick question. I know you say you're always a QRP kind of guy, so this amplifier business with the 1500 watts is not your thing. But my question is, then the other HF radios I see have like maybe 100 or 200. Is that still considered QRP or no?
No. QRP is normally, the pure definition of QRP is 5 watts or less, depending on who you talk to. 10 watts or less is still considered QRP. Anything above that, you're talking on normal power. So the only thing I want to say about that is there's nothing wrong with buying an amplifier. I mean, I'm not an amplifier guy, but the problem is it's sloppy. You know, you're making up for a poor design or a poor antenna, you know, with just raw horsepower. The other thing you need to understand is when you get on the radio, you'll see on a nice spring or summer evening that's coming up, there'll be 1 million people trying to talk to England or France or Germany or Austria, and there's 50 million people trying to make that contact. All I have to say is QRP station, that person will only want to talk to me. Because there's no fun in having raw horsepower after a while, you know. After you make the first dozen contacts or so, it's great and it's a lot of fun. Yes, I started off at 100 watts, but then it becomes more fun to see if you can get that far with lower power. And you can. You know, my best transmission was Greece on 1 watt, and I know that there are people who go totally worldwide on 0.8 watts. That's, you know, important to do.
Hey, Joe.
So, yes, 100 watts will get you any place, by the way. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just got the newest issue of QST, and they got a Japanese guy who hangs a dipole off his apartment balcony, and he works 500 milliwatts.
Yeah.
He's 3 states away from getting his all states.
Yeah. If you're careful on the antenna design, which is the next chapter, which happens to be my specialty, and you're careful about that, yeah, it's amazing. Now that's an achievement. Now you have my attention, okay? But that guy in Louisiana that's got 8.2 million gigawatts, well, so what, you know? And you know what? Anybody can do that, you know? All right, anyway, enough of that. It sounds like I'm preaching here. Okay, tuning and driving a linear amplifier, you can read about that. So you have to, so how you drive an amplifier, it depends on the band that you're on, okay? So the amplifier works different on the band that you're on. So if you look up at Electrocraft's website, they have amplifiers. If you look on eBay, and under amateur radio, you look at amplifiers, you'll see that you have to tune that amplifier to the band, then the frequency, and the load, okay? Because the amplifier is pushing out a ton of power. And if you're not careful, you will smoke your antenna, your radio, the feed line, the window that it goes through to get to the antenna. I mean, be careful with that, okay? But just
more equipment, more problems.
Yeah, that's it. But
Joe, I have a question.
100 watts is fine. So what I'm saying to you is if you hear me on the air and I'm QRP and you're at 100 watts, that's perfect. I'll talk to you. No problem. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thing is, like, for example, these kind of situations, like a feedback coming back to the radio,
Yeah.
not to burn it, like we can use the circuit breakers, right, effectively, or
hard
no?
to do. It's hard. That's yes. The answer is yes. That's theoretically possible. It's hard to find something like that. You would have to have you would have to homebrew it. I don't know of anybody who commercially makes that. Remember that you're going from the antenna, from the power amplifier. So the antenna goes to the power amplifier. The other side goes to the radio. You would need some kind of overload protection there. Most radios have some overload protection built in. My ICOM 7000, for example, will just shut off. It'll reboot. It'll restart. But be careful with that. You know,
because it's all about experimenting, and we don't want to burn radios every time we experiment it.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, what you do is you blow out the final amplifiers. In amateur radio, we call them the finals, final amplification. That's what you're going to blow up, and they're a pain in the neck to change out. Anyway, okay. That's all you need to know here. Don't worry about it too much. Then they talk about super heterodyne receivers. Don't let that big word fool you, okay? All super heterodyning is mixing the signals together to obtain the sum and different frequencies, okay? That's all it is, but they do it very, very efficiently, okay? And we're talking about receiving only, not transmitting, okay? So, for example, I showed you my Yaesu radio as compared to my Baofeng radio. So my Yaesu radio is $600. My Baofeng is $40. Judy says she wants to be a QRP gal. I love that. That was great, Judy. So we're talking about receiving only, right? So the reason that part of the reason for the price difference is my Yaesu radio is super heterodyne. Okay, the Baofeng is not. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that I can pick up radio stations that are much weaker than you will ever be able to pick up on a Baofeng. So if I put the two together, there's a huge difference. But again, $40 versus $600. Okay, so super heterodyne receivers become very selective. Okay. And they pick up very, very weak signals, no problem. And they sound pretty good, to be honest with you, okay? Excuse me. Okay, and they may ask you this question, okay, which is how it works. Okay, it goes through a mixer, and it goes to an RF amplifier first, and then to a mixer. That's how super heterodyne really basically works. Okay, product detector, and everybody knows what a product detector is. It's the thing that tells you if you're on CW or single sideband or what you're doing. digital modes, that's what tells you, the product detector. Okay. All right, cool. Then they go to a whole bunch of math that you really don't know. I don't know why they confuse you this way. Okay. And that's all we need to know here. Okay. And I'm trying to get past chapter 5 here if we possibly can. All right, cool. Digital signal processing, it's like Dolby stereo in your car, and I think I demonstrated that a bunch of times. Let's see if I can, I don't have the visual hooked up, but let's see if I can get you a sound sample. All right, so that's what it sounds like with no noise reduction. I'm now going to add noise reduction. That's the difference. All right. So what digital signal processing does is it eliminates unwanted signals. Okay. And the way it does that is it takes an analog signal, it converts it into a digital signal. You apply a filter digitally, computer-wise, through a microprocessor, and then you send it out to the speaker back as an analog, but it's been filtered. Okay. So it's digital DSP, or digital signal processing, is basically a filter, and it works by an analog to digital converter. Okay. When it does its thing, okay, and it's inside the radio just before it hits the speaker, it goes through another converter, digital to analog. So we're going from analog to digital, and then from digital to analog, minus the unwanted noise. Okay. And we go into this. So here is the analog to digital converter. This is the microprocessor inside. It's actually a little computer. It filters out the unwanted stuff, sends it to a digital to analog converter, and then out to the amp and the speaker. Okay? So analog signal in, analog signal out, but in the middle it gets converted to digital. That's how it works. Okay? And these are the most common types of DSP. And when you get your new radio, you'll have all this stuff in there. You'll have DSP, you'll have notch filtering. What does that all mean? It's just a type of digital signal processing. Gets rid of the noise. Okay? That's all it means. Okay. RF gain, again, it just controls how your amplifier is working so that you don't get swamped or send out signals that are swamping. Okay? And this is important because you'll be on the air, and then that guy from Louisiana will come on. He'll hit the transmit, and it doesn't matter if you're on his frequency or not. He'll totally wipe you out if you don't have your gain control set. Again, we're talking about HF. We're talking about very long distances, 10,000 miles or more, and all of a sudden this guy from Louisiana comes on, and that's all she wrote. The way to get around that is to have automatic gain control, both on the input and the output. Okay. All right, cool. Receiver linearity, okay. When we talk about that, it's how well it handles the incoming signal or the output signal, okay. So on the input side, you want to be able to distinguish between frequency and frequency. You get an idea that we can tune so finely in these frequencies, and we don't need a lot of bandwidth. So you want to be able to lock in to whoever you're talking to. Okay. Another way of handling that guy in Louisiana is to use an attenuator circuit. So we block out overpowering signal stations. Okay. All right, cool. HF installation, they need a lot of power. Okay. They can draw 8 amps, 10 amps, no problem. So the big thing here is never plug this in to your cigarette lighter. You'll set fire to your car. And they love this question. Bill, I defer to you. Was this in on your exam, not to plug in your radio to a cigarette lighter?
Yes, Joe, it was.
Yeah. Okay. They don't want. Thank you, Bill. Bill, I'm going to be coming back to you every once in a while just to make sure what I'm doing is correct. So they don't want you plugging this in and setting fire to your brand new Hyundai. I almost did that myself, and we have a brand new Hyundai, and I was so tempted to do it. I said, no, I can't do that. It's in Chapter 5. All right, anyway. All right. My wife's making fun of me. No, I didn't try to do that. I didn't try to do that. Okay. Anyway.
By the way, Mrs. Gomez, thank you very much for lending your husband to us.
Hold on. I'm going to hold on. Say it again.
Hello, Mrs. Gomez. Thank you for lending us your husband.
You're very welcome.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Gomez.
You're welcome, guys.
Echo that.
Hey, you know what? I may get some of her blueberry pie out of that. Thank you, guys. Anyway, all right. So antenna connections. Be careful with that when you go mobile. All right. So we know how that works. Try to make sure you're not going to hurt anybody with your antenna. You know, so don't put like a 75-meter antenna on your car, folks, okay? Because, you know, you'll take the corner and kill all the dogs and the rabbits and stuff like that. All right, cool. And then the other question they'd love to ask, just like in the technical, right? If you hear a high-pitched whine, it's your alternator. High-pitched whine, alternator. High-pitched whine, alternator. Here's the question that they're going to ask you, okay? And it's here, right here. All right, so be ready for it. Bill, was it on your test?
Absolutely, Joe.
I can't believe it. Anyway, this is taken directly from the technical, taken from the technical exam. They'd love it. I don't know why. I think it's on 4 out of the 5 exams. Okay. All right, cool. Grounding. So what do we know about grounding? What are the two things we know about grounding? Robert, you're on. Tell me what you know about grounding. Robert's playing hard to get here. All right. Let's pick on somebody we haven't. Armando, he's been so quiet. I don't know if his mic is not working or, Robert says his mic isn't working. 2-word, Armando, no sharp turns. Okay, that's good. What's the other thing you know? Come on, Robert, you can type. Okay, that's good. Joyce said no sharp angles. The shorter the better. Shortest path, that's good. I'm looking for one more word. Starts with a C.
Common ground.
Common ground. Greg's got it. All right, all right. So those are the things I want to know. So short as possible, no right turns. There's 3 things, obviously, and common ground. So this is an example of that. Okay, remember that? All right, cool. And here they are, okay? Keep all connection straps and wires short. Okay, connectors and that kind of stuff, okay? All right, cool. So we discussed that. Okay, RF interference. I think we touched upon this. You want to be careful. You're transmitting at a lot more power at this point, okay? So you want to be careful with what you're transmitting. Most of us have cable, some kind of cable TV. If you're still on an antenna, you're probably on digital anyway, so the problem is not as bad. But please be aware that you still can create harmonic interference, okay? And you've left your equipment, the feed line out in the rain and the snow and all of that stuff. You can get rectification, okay? And you can receive signals, send signals, and you're going to think there's something wrong with your radio, but it's not. It's your feed line, all right? So be careful with that, okay? And then they talk about suppression. Add a filter or a ferrite core choke, okay? All right, cool. And we finished that one. Whew, we're just smoking here. I want to see if we can get a test in before we say goodbye next Thursday, on Thursday. All right. Everybody okay? My favorite chapter. This one I know upside down and backwards, folks, okay? Antennas, right? So we know what these are. We know what they look like. Dipoles, ground planes, and random wires. We've discussed this. This is what a dipole looks like. This is looking from the top. This is looking from the side, okay? And Nothing new here. Now they introduce a new formula here, which is more accurate than the information that I gave you as in the technical, okay? And they talk about this formula, and this is a neat formula to know, okay? So let's say you wanted to transmit on this frequency, okay? Any frequency you like, all right? So the formula is 492 divided by the frequency in megahertz, right? So you pick any band you want, figure out a frequency where you want to be, and then 492 on top, and the frequency you want on the bottom. That gives you the length of the antenna for half wave, okay? Half wave dipole, okay? So if you wanted to transmit on 14.250 and nothing else, you would take 492 divided by 14.25, you get 34.5 feet. Okay? Please note this example. I want you to note this, all right? Because this is what they do on the general exam, okay? They're obviously need to get a life. They give you the choices of the answer possibilities are 8, 16, 24, and 32 feet. But that's not the answer you get. You get 34.5 feet. So the closest length and the correct answer is 32 feet. No, the correct answer is 34.5 feet. Why they would go out of their way to give you the wrong answer on the exam and expect you to get it right is beyond me. But all right, anyway, it's their exam, so that's what we have to live with. So remember, if they give you a frequency and you want to figure out what it is, 492 over the frequency gives you the length of the antenna, half wave dipole, half wave dipole. On one exam, they ask you for the full wave dipole. So you would take this answer, okay, and multiply it by 2 on just one exam. Okay. All right. Any questions on that stuff? All right. Vertical plane antennas, we talked about this. Was there a question? No. Okay.
Hey Joe, I had one. If it was a
yes,
quarter wave, would would it be half of what the 34.5?
Yeah, it would be half of that. Yeah, it'd be half. Yeah, half of that. So again, the standard here is they want you to know is half wave dipole antenna. And remember this. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is I had somebody build an antenna exactly this way, and then he wanted to know why it. Actually, it was a lady, young lady, and she wanted to know why it didn't work at 14.005. That's a different length. So I told her that she should go out and buy an antenna tuner. Okay. So remember that this measurement's only for this frequency. As soon as you leave this frequency, the antenna is no longer resonant. Right? And very important for you to know that. Okay. All right. Ground plane. Yes, sir.
Going back one to the last page, the 34.5 feet dipole, that's 34.5 feet total, or is that each half is 34.5?
Total length. Total length.
Okay, total. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, then we talked about ground plane, also known as vertical antennas, right? So they need some conductive ground plane to complete the circuit, okay? And what the electrons think is happening is it's actually going into ground this way, okay? So we know about those, and they're okay. I'm not too into ground plane antennas. They have too many other issues. And then they tell you about this formula, okay? I don't believe this one's on the exam. Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember that this was in the exam for a quarter wave ground plane.
Wasn't on mine, Joe.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever, yeah, I haven't seen them ever. But anyway, there's a formula for that. I wouldn't stress about it too much, okay? All right, cool. And they talk about mobile HF antennas. We know how that works, right? So it's magnetic, or maybe it's not magnetic. The magnetic ones, the car acts as the other side of the antenna. If it's not magnetic and you have to drill through your bumper, but they don't make them out of metal anymore anyway, you'd still have ground to the car, which would act as the other side of the antenna. Okay? All right. Then we talk about this stuff. this is actually pretty cool, okay? And this is random wire, okay? And it's not so much that it's on the test, it's just cool to know, okay? What's cool about this is pick any length.
I think we just lost you, Joe.
Yes, we did.
Yep, you're gone, Joe.
Lost you, Joe.
Hello, Joe, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
There we go.
Okay, now.
Okay, you can hear me?
That's good, yeah.
All right,
Yep.
good.
Now,
Sorry.
you can be kind of breaking up all night, but this time you really went away.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, so this is random length, and you can pick any length you like or whatever you have to deal with. As long as you have a tuner, you're good to go, okay? So random wire, any length you happen to have handy, pretty much any wire you have handy. Don't make it too thick because it'll be harder. But as long as you have an antenna tuner, you're good to go, all right? So you don't have to be too specific, is what I'm saying, for an antenna. All right.
Joe,
For dipoles, anyway. Yeah, go ahead.
would that hold true even if you were hooking that antenna or that random piece of wire up to an HT?
Yeah, absolutely.
You still need a tuner, or you still recommend it to?
Well, for HTs, it's too much of a hassle to get a tuner. You know, it's too much of a hassle. So, not so much for HTs, but certainly for HF, almost anything will work. I mean, anything. Just throw wire out your window, it'll work. As long as you have a tuner, and most new radios have tuners. If not, they're very, very cheap. You can get away with almost anything. All right, cool. The thing we talked about in the technical class, the effects of height over ground, okay, is plotted this way. And basically, all this means is the higher the better. Okay? So that's all this means. Okay? And then the question they will ask you, okay, is here. Is this guy here? And below a half wavelength in height, the antenna's feed point impedance significantly decreases until it's close to zero at ground level. Okay? So that's the only question that they'll ask you about that.
Yep,
Please
that was
note,
on there.
yeah, that's the one that they'll ask you. Also, please note that how high your antenna is affects the radiation pattern, okay, of the antenna, okay? So this shows you the different radiation patterns of a typical dipole, all right, and its height. So at an eighth of a wavelength height, this is what it looks like. At a half a wavelength height, this is what it looks like, et cetera, okay? All right, cool. Effects of polarization. Remember that antennas can be horizontally or vertically polarized, and what effect they have. And they're saying ground-mounted vertical antennas are able to generate stronger signals at low angle of radiation. What does that mean? That means that, hold on a second. Let me switch to my pen here. Okay. So depending on where the antenna is in the lower they are, okay, their takeoff angle, their angle of radiation is what they're talking about. And ground-mounted vertical antennas, which are these guys, right? So it's just like a whip antenna, a piece of metal going straight up. It tends to perform better, okay, because it has a lower angle, takeoff angle. So it'll take off like this. And assuming you don't have some gigantic obstruction here, they tend to do a little bit better. Kind of, sort of, maybe. Well, according to the manual anyway. All right, cool. My favorite antenna, Yagis, the greatest invention made since peanut butter and jelly. That's what these guys are and how Yagis work. They're the most popular antennas made because they are directional, and you can tune them. You can actually point them in at different angles, in different headings, and they're also known as beam antennas. So if you hear the word beam, that's what they're referring to, a Yagi. Okay, and we know how they work. We know about their, and if you don't, please ask me. Everybody knows about their driven element, the reflector, the different components of it, and parasitic elements. Everybody okay with that? Okay. You will build one in your career. Either build one or buy one. I suggest you build one. Okay.
I think it's the wider the element, the higher the frequency. Am I right?
It can be. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the best example I can give you of a Yagi was the old-fashioned TV antennas. Okay. And they were designed to receive signals from just about anything. That's the way they worked. Okay.
Okay.
As opposed to having a dipole, it takes up a lot more space. Yagis are much more compact. The problem with Yagi is however you point them, that's where you're going to be talking and listening to. Their pattern, radiation pattern, is very, very specific. Okay, but all of your power goes in that direction. So that's the cool thing about it. Okay.
So those would be pretty cool for the HTs then, right?
Oh, you need to have one if you're going to talk to the satellites in the International Space Station. You absolutely need one. You can build it out of PVC and a steel measuring tape. That works awesome. That works awesome.
Okay.
And you can hand-hold it, go outside, and you can figure out when the International Space Station is going to be near you. You point it up, and you got them. It's really amazing. It's amazing. I've been doing this for a gazillion years, and I'm still impressed with that. What a difference that makes. You unplug your rubber duck, you plug in this Yagi, and point it in the right direction. It'll blow your socks off.
My rubber duck's in the recycling bin.
I understand that, too. All right. Okay, and then they go into
Joe?
this. Yes.
Quick question. So if I know where the location of a repeater, and I want to be sure to hit it, can I put a Yagi on my HT and point it in the direction of the hospital, so to speak?
You betcha. You betcha. As a matter of fact, yes, absolutely. So if you look at the bottom of the study sheet, okay, and they say a 3-element, so that's just 3 components of a Yagi is 9.7 dBi. That's a lot of gain. That's a lot of gain for a 3-element antenna. That's 3 strips of metal, okay? So this is amazing. And you do get that. I mean, I don't know that you get 9.7 dB, but you get pretty close to it. So it's very cool. Very cool stuff. Very, very cool.
I actually got one. I'm sorry. I actually got one off eBay, the PVC, and
yeah.
Because I haven't seen one, so I wanted to see how it was built, and I haven't really played with it yet, but it's pretty compact and pretty cool.
Yeah. You'll be impressed how far you can go. It really is amazing. Anyway, so they talk about how the wavelengths work. Here, what they're trying to let you know about is it's important that you know this. When you become extras, and I know you all will at some point, this becomes more of an issue. We don't want you nuking somebody, okay? Even though that RF is not ionizing radiation, we want you to know how your antenna is emitting. We want to be careful with that, okay? And we also want you to know that if you're not careful, you could be your own worst enemy, because there is a point where the signals cancel each other out. Your antenna is working against you. So what you need to take away from all of this is there's a lot to antenna design. We could spend our entire lives together, you and I, and just talk about antennas. I mean, that's a whole science and art in and of itself. Okay. So they take apart the Yagi, and these are the things you want to know about. Okay. And here's the question. Bill, I defer to you, sir. Was this on your exam?
Not that specific question,
Okay.
but they talked about the relationship between the elements.
Okay. All right. This one is on a lot of the exams, I think 3 out of the 5. That's why it's on the study sheet. And by the time you're done here, and especially if you're far away from a repeater, you can get a 30 dB gain if you're careful. Judy says, can you send us directions for the tape measurement Yankee? Absolutely. Absolutely. I will send you a YouTube video on it as well as an article on how to make it. We make them in our club every once in a while over at Limarc before the meeting. Takes about a half an hour maximum to make. Couple of bucks, can't be more than 10 bucks worth of stuff. It works awesome. Works awesome. Okay? So I recommend that if you're having trouble reaching somebody, that's the way to go. All right, cool. And then they talk about the design trade-offs between different types of antenna. You don't need to go into this too much. Is everybody okay with SWR and what standing wave ratio means and how we deal with them? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody not okay with that? All right. So SWR, you want to be careful with that. Okay? And because that's a radio killer if you're not really careful, and it's how much, it's the ratio of how much power you're putting out as to how much power is coming back to the radio. Okay. All right, cool. And they talk about loop antennas. If space is very limited for you, you can create these loop antennas. There's magnetic, there's non-magnetic loop antennas. They have all different sizes. Some of these can be huge, some of them can be small. You can make them out of wire, you can make them out of metal, and they talk about how that kind of works. Okay? All right, cool. And you can make them out of almost anything. So you can make them square, you can make them diagonal or rhombic, as they're called. Just very cool stuff. Okay? And on the study sheet here, they talk about they talk about delta and quad loop antennas. That's these two guys. Okay? All right? And they talk about these formulas here, dipole. So the takeaway from all of this stuff is this is the stuff I need you to know. Okay? I haven't seen anything on quad loop and delta loops. Bill, did you see any questions on the quad loops and delta loop antennas on your exam? Was there anything?
Just on the practice exams. It wasn't on my actual exam.
Yeah, I haven't seen them either, but just to be safe, it's been a while since I went through all the general exams. Just kind of look at that, okay? And just read the chapter kind of carefully. All right, cool. Specialized antennas, depending on where you live, okay? NVIS, near vertical incident skywave antennas, and what these guys are antennas of a special design, and they look like this, and this is the ground, and their radiation pattern is literally almost straight up at about 85 degrees. I'm sorry, at about 175 degrees from the ground, right? So 180 would be straight up, about 175 degrees. And what they're trying to do here is bounce off of the atmosphere, ionosphere, or a particular layer, depending on the type of day, to get as long range as possible. That's near vertical wave, okay? And that's, hold on, I got to switch to my stupid thing here. All right, and that's what NVIS, near vertical incident skywaves, okay? And they're great for long-distance antennas. And of course, if you're like me, you just can't have one antenna. You've got to have a whole bunch of them. And you can stack them, okay? and stack them. And the thing you need to know about vertically stacking antennas is that you can increase gain, and it narrows the elevation bandwidth. So they're okay. They're okay. I run into more interference problems with this. But anyway, this is what they look like. So you have a mast, you hook up a bunch of them together, a lot. Okay? Okay. And then they talk about log periodical antennas. The most common example of a log periodic antenna is the old-fashioned TV antenna. Okay? Log periodical antennas, very wide bandwidth. So they'll receive from just about anything. Okay? So they work on logarithmic functions, that log button that you press on your calculator, and they can receive from just about anything. Receive. Transmit, a little tougher. Okay? Why don't we use TV antennas for amateur radio? Because they're sloppy as far as transmitting. You won't get very far with them. Okay? But receiving, they work pretty well for receiving. Okay? Beverage antennas. Okay? I think we talked about this in the technician class. Okay? Great antenna. Okay? So they're not very high, usually less than 20 feet from the ground. Okay? You can't transmit with them, but they work pretty good for receiving. The most common example of this is when you buy a shortwave radio. They include a piece of wire that you clip around the regular antenna, and they tell you to, like, hang it on your door or something. Is a good example of beverage antennas. Not good. Not good for transmitting. It's very inefficient. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Beverage antennas. We talk about that a little bit more. And then the last thing we're going to talk about tonight is multi-band antennas. That's what I have in my house. So it's designed for 80 meters, but of course I'm all over the place. And multi-band antennas, you must have an LC circuit. LC circuit, antenna tuner. Tank circuit, antenna tuner. Basically all the same. Okay? So they talk about this, okay, that you have to have some kind of circuit to transmit and receive between band and band. Okay? But this is what I use. They call them multi-bands antennas because they're relying on the antenna tuner. And what they say, if you don't have an antenna tuner, you can have something like an inductor, and you can slide it back and forth. If you think I'm going out in the snow to slide an inductor back and forth on my antenna, you're kidding me. Okay? So that's
Come on, Joe. Where's the spirit?
No. Robert will tell you, we've had more snow this year than I can ever imagine. And there was no way I'm going into my backyard. No way. And then when I change frequency, when I change bands, I got to go back out and tune it again? Nah, not in this lifetime. So I spent $80. I bought an antenna tuner for my little radio, and I pressed the button, and it all goes away. All right? But the way it would work is you needed some kind of trap, inductor, and you'd slide it back and forth. That's all this means. Okay? All right. And I think we're going to stop here for this evening. Any questions on any of this? Are we good?
Yep.
All right. Here's what we're going to do, folks. Next class is our last class. Of course, there's a survey that you have to answer for me. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the first 20 minutes or so of the class. I'm going to set up my Baofeng. I'm going to go over CHIRP with you, C-H-I-R-P. I'm going to be using it on a PC. I've never used it on a Mac. I apologize, even though I am a big Mac fan. And I'm going to kind of show you how that works so everybody can program their Baofengs, because I've been asked that a million times. And then I will not go over Chapter 8 with you, okay? We'll finish this chapter. We'll finish Chapter 7. We'll just highlight a couple of things in Chapter 7. And then we're going to go over some exams, all right? it's important that you do read Chapter 8 because the exams, we're going to take the exams as is. So since I'm a VE, I have access to some of the exams, so I'm going to try to tailor the exams so they're as close to the actual exams as you will take, okay? So I'm going to try to make up some custom ones here and ask some custom questions here. And they'll be as close to the majority of the exams as I can possibly make them, so we'll see how we do.
You going to record that session?
I am.
Okay.
I record all the sessions, yeah.
Let's, I'm going to miss Thursday's class. I have to get to the ARIES meeting since I handle the inventory for Dave and Richie.
Okay. Yeah, Sheila will be there. So, yeah, no problem. I'll go over them. And then, David, certainly, since you're so close to me, if you have any questions, you have my home number. Everybody, I'll send everybody my cell phone number. I do work during the day, and it gets crazy during the day. So if you have questions after 5 o'clock, I'll be around all weekend until Sunday. So if you have questions or something you're stuck on before you take the exam, certainly call me or send me an email, and I'll with your phone number, and I'll call you back as soon as I can. And that'll be it. Any questions?
Did you order a jacket?
I did. Sheila and I both ordered a jacket.
All right.
Are they in?
Yes, they are, except for medium.
Yeah. Except for medium, Sheila. David's telling me except for medium. All right.
Hey, one quick question.
Yeah, sure.
The new paperless license policy, how does that affect us getting upgraded? Are we not getting that paper anymore? Is it all on the computer?
Yeah, everything is on the computer.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't get any more paper. They give you a PDF and you can print it out, which I think is incredibly cheesy. You guys worked hard for this. You guys really worked hard. I'm sure you had better things to do here, but you worked hard for it. I'm very proud of all of you, but yeah, now it's just a download thing. Okay.
All right, cool.
All right, guys.
Question.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
I'm sorry, I'll make it real quick. On a vertical antenna, I've seen antennas at the base. They got four wires sticking out perpendicular to the vertical. What are those?
Those are air radials. So what they're trying to do is, remember, you don't get something for nothing. So they're trying to even out the radiation pattern over a wide. So put those little things sticking out. Do they work?
Okay. All right.
It's one. They have corona balls that you can put on top of the antenna. They came out with all sorts of different things, and that's part of the fun to experiment. Yeah, but that's what it's for. It's that radiation pattern a little bit more.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
All right, guys. Have a lovely evening. I'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thank you, Joe.
Have a good night.
See you soon.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Bye.